Hello everyone, and thanks for coming back to the channel. Today we're taking a look at the iFlight TurboBee 136RS. Featuring 1104 4200 kV motors, 3-inch HQ bi-blade props. The specs say RunCam Nano 2, but I've got a Caddx camera in mine. The Success Micro 16x16 flight stack, which features an F4 flight controller with an OSD, a 12 amp 4-in-1 ESC with connectors, VTX featuring pit mode, 25 milliwatts, 100 milliwatts, and 200 milliwatts. Smart audio via tramp. Mine is the FrSky version, so the XM Plus is right up here. It also is available with an FrSky R XSR receiver or a TBS Crossfire Nano RX. The recommended battery is a 450 milliamp 4S battery, so I flew it on these GNB 450 milliamp 4S batteries. Also tried the Beta FPV version. Comes with this battery pad for your mounting, and 2 battery straps, 3 sets of props, a TurboBee 120 RS motor rotation sheet, which has a flying checklist, a baggie of extra screws, motor post to motor post. I am getting 136 millimeters. The single bottom plate is 3 millimeters thick. The arms appear to be a little over 4 millimeters thick. This is what the weave looks like. These little bits are sharp. It weighs almost 66.5 grams. With the GNB 454S battery, it weighs just over 118 grams. With the Beta FPV battery, it weighs just under 118 grams. So as we get started on this flight, yeah, it says 120 RS up there up top, and I left it because I thought that served as a pretty good reminder. I don't know if something went wrong in the flashing and they just put the wrong thing in the firmware when they flashed the flight controller, or if they just changed the PID tune, because it did come with a PID tune. Although I will say that I thought it was a bit loose for a PID tune that I would have liked to flown. And I didn't tweak it out because many times when something comes with a PID tune, I think it's best to show it unless I just can't control it. If I can't get enough control from the PID tune, then I need to make a change, so at least I can show you what the hardware can do. In this particular case, please pay attention to that throttle. It's in the top left-hand corner. That gives you the throttle values. When I go into a high-speed turn, I felt that I had to give it more throttle than I expected. And I do want to extend my thanks to a few people out on Facebook. I believe it was in the iFlight group when they were asking me if I was going to review this, and I said, no, I don't have one. I'm not planning on buying one from what I've seen. And they kind of cajoled iFlight into sending me one. So I appreciate iFlight and those people thinking of me and sending this along for review. I do think it needed a little bit bigger motor. That's kind of my bottom line to this. For me and the kind of flying that I'm looking for and the performance that I'm looking for, I just felt that in those high-speed turns it couldn't quite keep up with what I needed. Now sure, I could just jam the throttle, but if I'm giving it 100% or 85 or 90% throttle just to keep from going down in a turn, I think it needs more performance, because I don't think, I might be fast, but I don't think I'm some sort of speed record guy or anything. This is just the flight that I do, and I fly a lot of different quads in the backyard. In this particular one, I just felt it was lacking a little bit in the performance of the motor. Now it is 1104, it is a 4200 kV. I think we should have seen probably a 4500 kV and maybe even 1106 motor. Maybe. I have seen 1105 motors around the 5000 kV perform very, very well off of this prop at about this weight. Running 3S, so that was a little bit surprising, and I'm kind of wondering if these connectors might have been a bottleneck too. I can't fault everything because, you know, it would take some extensive testing to kind of break down where it was that was maybe a bottleneck for the flight performance. But those are my initial thoughts as far as the flight. I think a few people had said that this was going to be probably the highest performer of this class or category, and it performs well. Outside of, you know, my personal feeling that the PID tune was a little bit loose for me, I thought it flew very well. I just was expecting, maybe because of the things being said online, that it would just have more performance than anything else I'd flown, which it just didn't. Now, iFlight, to its credit, makes some of the best carbon, or at least the most resilient carbon, that I have flown. I have flown a lot of different frames. Some of them break, some of them don't, but I don't think I've ever broken an iFlight frame. I think it was probably about a year and a half ago. I had done a punch. Oh, there's a crash, but we go ahead and just take right back off to finish up the pack. But back to a year and a half ago, I centered a tree after a dive on a machine, and I was astounded that it didn't break the carbon. So iFlight and their carbon, that's top notch. That's something to be said out of one of the main features of a quad is its resiliency. Of course, you have a TPU pod on this, so if you were to somehow find a way to smack it from that direction, you wouldn't quite have the resiliency that you might in carbon fiber. But that is kind of the racing style. We see a lot of TPU pods when it comes to racing. We come in at the end of the flight, 3 minutes and 30 seconds. That's a bit long on average for me on this particular machine. Oftentimes my flights were actually coming in around 3 minutes, so I have a feeling I was flying a little bit slower than I normally do, and it's probably because I was compensating for the lack of thrust that I would find in those long, hard at-speed turns. Now, some might be asking about 3S. I did fly it on 3S, but I didn't find that change anything. I flew it on 3S mainly because I thought, well, with the decreased battery weight, maybe that would help in the performance, but I just didn't find that to be the case. I thought it was okay on 3S as well. I think if you're looking at this machine and you're looking for something that's going to be resilient with parts that you can probably trust, and a company that's been around for a while, iFlight has, that this is, despite what I'm saying about its performance, it's a good quality quad. At least I haven't heard of too many people having problems with iFlight products. Now, they have a particular Whoop board that is around that I don't have a lot of experience with. Actually, I don't have the Whoop board at all. It's the one that has the VTX on it, so I can't really give you any information about that resiliency. But I do think quite a few of these iFlight Success stacks are out. If you have one, please leave a comment down below about your experience for it. Also, I think this standoff back here probably needs to be a little bit thicker. I think that's 3 millimeters, and you can see that I've bent it in a crash. It was actually in a flight that I flew after the flight that you saw on screen. So it's a minor thing. We need a new screw. We probably need a new standoff. That's probably 25 millimeters. You could probably get away with even a 20 millimeter. It's just going to bring things closer down to the VTX. I don't think that would cause you any harm if the receiver were to get too close. I think that's encapsulated in heat shrink, but if the receiver got down there to where it might be touching, you might want to put some foam or something between the two for impact resistance when you come down like this. Of course, they've got the fan on the TPU canopy, or fin, and that helps you with turtle mode. I didn't use turtle mode. I don't oftentimes use turtle mode because my flying surface is the grass, and one of the things that I try not to risk is if I can go pick up the quad, I won't turtle mode. So if I were to possibly get this on top of the house, where I'm not going on top of the house, I would then use turtle mode to get myself out of a bad situation where I might lose the quad. I get that question quite a bit on the channel about turtle mode. And of course, that started with some of the CrazyBee boards, where if you had a prop that was bound and you turtle mode, you might blow your ESC or your flight controller. I don't think that would be the case in this particular machine. I'm a little bit curious about the specs online saying RunCam Nano, which is one of my favorite nano cameras, and said it's got a Caddx, but maybe it's a wild card on what you get. I don't know. If you have one of these, I think this is very important because this has been around for a while. If you have one, please leave a comment down below about your experiences with this. If you've had any support contact with iFlight, also that's important to note when we have different quad companies out there, any sort of contact that customers might have with them, that's an important part of the purchase that I sometimes forget. I do like how the TPU canopy, well, this one's actually kind of out here a little bit. Must have come out in the crash. I do like how they mounted these antennas. It's probably not ideal for range, but it's going to work pretty well for diversity, because you do see we have that 90 degree. Oftentimes when you talk to long range pilots, they want it out the tail and then one up 90. That way they always have that 90 degree in their diversity antennas for the best possible range. Of course, when you turn around and you fly back towards you, you've got that other antenna hopefully pointing well above your battery so that you get the reception that you need. But I think this will work perfectly fine for quite a bit of range. You know, an FrSky XM Plus, those have pretty good range. I've never had fail-safes with them, but I don't fly in big spaces. And quite frankly, when it comes to online reports, you don't hear about a lot of people fail-safing with an FrSky XM unless they're doing something relatively extreme. You know, if you're going real long range, you need to use specialized equipment. And this is, you know, general fun flying. And in the quick roll, I brought out how sharp these are down here. And I only brought that out because at one point in time, I was taking a prop off or putting a prop on, and one of these edges kind of caught my finger, and I was pretty certain that I cut myself, but no blood on the quad to report. So they're just, you know, it's rare that I note something like that, and so it caught my eye how sharp these are. They're very sharply cut, and the edges are chamfered. It's kind of a mild chamfering, but the edges around here are chamfered, but they aren't chamfered on the inside, like right down in here. This is a straight edge, a 90 degree. It's not rolled over at all. And also at the front here, this is chamfered a little bit on this side, but not on the inside. So something about the cutting, it is very, very clean carbon cutting. I do appreciate that. And I think it'll survive most crashes. Of course, if you come in and you crash from a major dive and you hit concrete, in most cases, all bets are off. I will say about the pins that they use, I'm not a fan of pins. We kind of went through that, what was it, about a year ago, where we started to see a lot of flight controllers use pins. It does clean up the install, but if you have any movement of those pins, it can weaken the joint connecting the pins to the boards. In this particular case, they did use a metal screw all the way through, and you can see right here they're button heads, hex button heads to be precise, if you can see those, my finger out of the way, and those do go all the way through, and everything is soft mounted, so it should move all together. Now, I had a number of crashes, but we all crashed differently, so your results may vary. But it should move all together. This is one motion I'm worried about, what I just did with the rotation, because that would actually tend to weaken those connectors. But again, you know, I'm speculating here. I didn't actually have any problems. Mine still works just fine outside of having a bent prop and a bent standoff. I did zip tie the battery lead down for protection from battery ejections, and I did that because, well, I always do that. And it's a good thing to do. I wish manufacturers would do that. I know it doesn't look pretty necessarily, and it doesn't make for a good picture, but that is the safest thing to do. If you've got a quad out there and you can, I always suggest you do this because it could save you some great pains, because if you tug on this battery lead, sometimes these connectors are really, really tough to get apart. So if you have a battery ejection, it can then pull on your ESC pads, and it could pull those right off, and if that happens, it's very likely that you're done with the ESC and you have to get a new one, and you're down for at least the time of getting a replacement part, unless you carry these things in your bins. And the tune, I'll go ahead and put that on screen. Sometimes people buy quads and then they later on need to get back to stock tune. And as far as these Beta FPV batteries, they perform okay. They're almost on par with the GNB, but not quite. Of course, the 450 Beta FPVs, I haven't had those very long, so they're still fairly fresh. I would want to reserve my actual judgment for a number of flights, but you would have to look at the price and the cost difference between these and the GNBs. If the GNBs or the Beta FPVs are pretty close in price, I would just suggest going with the GNBs. If you wanted to try a new battery, I'd never stop you from trying anything out, but I just don't think you should expect to have a lot greater performance. It's slightly lighter, surprisingly, because they do use a thicker gauge wire. The battery dimensions look to be almost identical, but you can see the gauge of wire difference on the two batteries. And so to my surprise, again, the Beta FPV battery was just 1 gram lighter. Due to the questions that I get on the channel, I would appreciate it if manufacturers included some good instructions. In this particular case, these are very basic instructions. It actually kind of looked like it's torn out of a book or something. Things about binding, things about arming or switches. There's certain things that some people will need to know that just can't be handled in a sheet like this. Now, I will say Happy Model tends to put out a sheet that gives pretty good information about overall setup of a quad. And I'd like to see more companies do that, because I think it would make it easier for people who are just getting started, or maybe this is their first or second quad and they just need a little memory recall on what they need to do to get this one going. Not everybody has the experience necessary to just buy a quad like this and then set it up and go fly. So this one, I see it listed on the iFlight site for $109.99. Of course, that changes whenever you select your receiver. It comes in all sorts of different colors. Thankfully, they sent me blue. Apparently, either I asked them to, or they just know that I like blue, so I'm kind of a bit of a sucker. It is a looker, very sleek. In my opinion, it's futuristic as well, but you can get it in yellow and orange and purple and green and red and black. You can get it in all sorts of different colors, which is pretty cool that you can just select what you want. They also have their own batteries, but unfortunately I didn't get any of their batteries with the quad. It doesn't come with anything. They have a full send 4S 450 that is also a high volt. The C rating really doesn't matter, because that's mumbo jumbo. They seem to stick any C rating on the battery. That's all battery manufacturers, not just iFlight or anybody else. The C rating doesn't matter. You can use it away as an identifier within a brand, but from brand to brand, that C rating just doesn't matter. But anywho, that battery is coming in at $14. So that's something else you might want to look at as far as price point, and when you're looking at a quad like this or another one. I'll put some links down below to where you can check out any changes in specifications or pricing or available receivers and color options down below. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know in the section down below. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.